This is the tale of the navigator who crossed the ice walls, part 2. The story begins with a group of men who fought for the Continental Navy in the Revolutionary War. During the war, the men were telling naval stories when it came to Captain Butler, and Butler talked about lands that he knew possibly existed beyond Antarctica, beyond the ice wall. Upon hearing these stories, the men were captivated, and as a group, they decided to pursue these lands after the war. Shortly after General Cornwallis surrenders in Yorktown, one of the men on the crew, named William Morris, decided to buy one of the naval ships. This is the ship that they'd use on their epic adventure, and wasting no time, they set sail in November 1781. They'd shove off in Charleston, North Carolina, and 6 months later, they'd sail around South America, and they'd end up at the William Morris Strait right here. And in late spring, early summer 1782, as the ice caps melted, a current would pull them through the ice wall, and they'd end up in the waters unknown. The water was like nothing the men had ever seen before. They were so deep, they were black. After successfully navigating one of the summer gates, Captain Butler was getting ready to have a word with the men, when one of the sailors quickly descended from the crow's nest, yelling, "They're coming towards us! It's something gigantic!" As the crew redirects their attention towards the horizon, his feet hit the deck with a thud. The crew immediately notices a massive ship, and it's closing in fast. The craft was the likes of which nothing the crew had ever seen. It was made from a material they didn't recognize, and it was black as night. Their hearts pounded with fear as the unknown approached. But all the owner of the ship, William Morris, could think about was that their trip was going to be ended abruptly. We made it this far only to get cut short, he thought. But then Captain Butler reassured them that everything would be all right. Just stay calm. A sense of relief swept over Mr. Morris, but he was still fearful of what was to come. At this point, the ship was just a couple hundred yards out, when suddenly a sound like nothing they've ever heard. It pierced the airwaves, almost bringing the men to their knees. Luckily, just moments later, the sound stopped. That's when a loud voice with a perfect English accent emitted from some kind of horn. "Dear gentlemen from the walled lands, some of our men are coming down to approach your boat. Please remain calm, as we will do you no harm." The message sent a chill down the crew's spine, unsure as to whether or not they were going to attack. At this point, they knew there was no escape. The ship was colossal. It looked as though it was something from the future. Again, Butler reassured the crew, acknowledging that he was aware something like this may take place. 3 men appeared to be making their way off the ship onto theirs. These men were in uniform, and they had emblems on those uniforms. Emblems that they had never seen. Morris notices a large flag flying at the top of their ship. It was blue with a white circle in the middle. After helping the men up, each of them shook hands, and one of the men introduced himself as the captain. "It's been a long time since we've seen someone from the known lands in these waters. What are you boys doing this way?" Butler spoke out and claimed that they were sailing along the Arctic when a current brought us through the ice wall, and they figured they'd navigate it. As Morris was watching the conversation, he couldn't help but notice what seemed to be a certain camaraderie between Butler and their captain. Their captain looked back at the other two as if impressed with the feat. "Well, sorry about our approach. It's protocol right now. Usually, we're much more welcoming to visitors. We don't know what happened to the last people that crossed the ice wall, but that doesn't matter at this time. Here's a map. This will take you to the safe lands." This last sentence didn't resonate well with the crew. Safe lands? Well, does that mean there's unsafe lands, they asked? "Well, the lands where you come from are quite unsafe now, aren't they?" replied one of the sailors. "You men will be fine," he continued. "Just follow the map we've given you." But before they parted ways, William Morris had a question that he couldn't help but ask. "Where do you come from, sir?" "From the ancestral republic, sir," replied one of the men. "We understand that all you boys have questions, but there will be time for that," he'd add. As the 3 men boarded their ship, they retreated immediately, heads on a swivel, as if they are looking for something. Unfortunately, the meeting left the men with more questions than answers, but Butler, as the assured captain he was, snapped them back to reality. "Well, boys, full speed ahead to the ancestral republic. Let's go." They had been sailing for a while when the crew asked the captain what he wanted to tell them before the visit. He sort of dodged the question and said everything will be answered when we get to the ancestral republic, where it's safe. "Remember, fellas, there's people that don't want us in these waters." Had it been someone else that we ran into earlier, this wouldn't have been the same result. We're lucky we got past the ice wall, and now we're headed to safe lands. Once to the Republic, they'll tell us about the situation. It's something more complex than we know. Fellas, the adventure has only just begun. We're in a war zone. It's time to realize that. What do you mean, a war zone? They asked. Who crossed the ice walls in the Ancestral Republic. It was a clear, dark night, and the waters were still. Beautiful lights illuminated on the horizon. The men were in awe. Captain Butler couldn't help but notice their fascination as they approached the Ancestral Republic. They decided that they'd vacate the unknown waters immediately, per the warning they got just a few days prior. The crew arrived at the port of this modern city, waiting to be received as guests. They couldn't help but notice the serene silence and peace that the city emanated, even though all were awake and it was bustling. They stood there for just a couple minutes when several agents dressed in the same uniforms the men that warned them were wearing approached. Welcome to the Ancestral Republic, one of them said as he shook hands with Captain Butler. We're glad to have you here. To be honest, we didn't think that they were telling the truth when they told us of your visit. The fact that you are here is seemingly impossible, but not impossible. It's been many, many years, but we've had visitors of the like before. Butler introduced the crew, and William Morris is the owner of the boat. They were jostling with excitement. Thank you. It's an honor to come to these unknown lands, said Captain Morris. But before he could continue on, the men said, Here, we need to take you to the Republic President. He wanted me to accompany you and Mr. Butler to see him, as your visit is unprecedented. A vehicle pulled up that they had never seen before. It was completely silent. They were amazed. There wasn't a street in the city that wasn't illuminated by beautiful great lanterns, of which the electricity they did not know the source. At first, the peace and quiet baffled them, but they quickly realized there were no carriages or horses. The agent that accompanied them had a luminous device that depicted pictures and spoke a different language which they did not know in his hands. They approached a beautiful stone building. Inside, marble walls that were cold to the touch. A gentleman with a mustache came out to greet Mr. Morris. He shook Morris's hand very tightly and said his name was Fayal. You are Mr. Morris from the USA, yes? He replied, yes. Then he proceeded to tell him, sorry about the times you came to visit, because they are not good ones. Mr. Morris, we are in an extreme situation. We usually watch this war from afar, but now it has came to our doorsteps. Morris nodded, pretending to understand everything. You must not fully understand yet, but what we are is part of the old humanity, before the last reboot. Morris didn't understand. How many humanities exist or have existed, he asked. There were many humanities at different times, and many reboots. What's happening, my night god people? Hope y'all are doing well today. I hope that you guys are enjoying this story as much as I am. It's absolutely awesome. It gets the mind working. It keeps you on your toes. And what a fascinating theme, plot, storyline. You name it. It's crazy. I kind of left it at a climax on purpose because I want you to come back next time. Now, I have other stories on deck, but I need you guys to let me know. Do you want me to continue this story? And I guess that is obviously depending on how it does on the platforms, whether or not it gets a good amount of views or pushed, or whether it gets held back, whatever. It shouldn't. As I said, it is a fictional tale, but it's fascinating nonetheless. It gets the brain juices flowing at the end of the day. I mean, it's talking about these people or humans that escaped the last reboot. And I've had a theory about this. With the mud flood and everything, Tartarians, I've been thinking a lot about it lately. If, in fact, it is true about Tartaria and the Tartarians, the mud flood, there's a lot of evidence to show that it did, in fact, take place with all the buildings that have been buried in 20 feet of mud, technology they were alleged to have, universal electricity, etc. And in my pondering and thoughts, I kind of noticed something. Where are all the bodies of all of these people and Tartarians that were said to be a part of this mud flood. Wouldn't you think there would be mass graves? Wouldn't you think in said mud they'd be finding bodies, or at least skeletal remains of them? I guess I would. I would assume that at the end of the day, there would be evidence of the Tartarians. So the question lies, where did they go? Where did all of them go? Very odd. My first guess is obviously underground. If y'all didn't see my reel, where they found two massive caverns around the mantle of the earth, check it out. That's just one of the many theories I ponder. I've been getting a lot of different suggestions from you guys in my messages, and they're all awesome. They really are. I hope I can get to yours. Keep keeping on, keep messaging me, keep finding good content, and I will do my best to present it to you guys. Just make sure at the end of the day, you stay positive, you manifest greatness, stay in the light, stay in the love, treat others how you want to be treated. It's very simple, guys. Hope you all stick around and continue to watch content from me, and I will be back for more real soon. May go live real soon too. So stay tuned, y'all. I am out.